The idea behind the Hyundai Exter is actually quite simple. Take what is a straightforward city commuter and package it in something more than that, something funkier. At its core, the Hyundai Exter is a straightforward daily commuter like the Hyundai Grand i10 Neos. But unlike what Hyundai did while taking the Elite i20 to the i20 Active, the job here is a lot more thorough. So let's spend the day with it, get familiar with it and see what the experience is like. Let's split the looks of the Exter into two halves. First, how SUV it is, and second, how Hyundai it is. Now, here's the deal. The Exter slots in below the Venue in their entire model lineup. But it's not like the Venue was a particularly big car to begin with. It's literally called a subcompact SUV. So the difference in dimensions between the two, it's not night and day. The wheelbase is almost the same, and in fact, the Exter is actually a little bit taller. And that's all down to the SUV-fication of this car. Take a look at the roof rails, for example. They're not flush fitting with the roofline itself. There's a large gap in between to amplify the sense of height with this car. And things get amplified further with elements like all of the thick body cladding, the flat nose, flat bonnet, and also 185mm of unladen ground clearance. But aside from all these design elements to tell you that this is a brand new car, you can also tell that this is definitely a Hyundai. The H-pattern LED DRLs or the H-pattern in the tail light, for example. By the way, the indicators are right here behind this, and you do have halogen projector headlights. Or if you look at this front grille, the panel near the C-pillar, or the applique on the tailgate. All of these elements could have just been simple black appliques, but they've got a pattern on them instead. Even the design for the 15-inch alloy wheel, it's anything but subtle. Now, in isolation, these elements do seem like a bit extra, but they do come together quite cohesively on a design that isn't understated to begin with. Now, my favorite bit of the design, it's actually the two color options. This cosmic blue that looks a lot like Porsche's Shark Blue, and the khaki green that looks a little bit Land Rover Defender. And this is what the boot space is like. 391 liters, or in actual application speak, you can get one airport-sized suitcase in. Hello, monkey. You can also get maybe a medium-sized suitcase along with a small trolley bag, maybe a soft bag along with it. So quite practical even for weekend trips. And while the rear seat does fold down, it doesn't split. And even if you do fold it down, it's not going to be completely flush with the boot floor. There is going to be a little bit of a hump. But all in all, plenty practical, and you also get a boot lamp. If you opt for the CNG though, bear in mind that this boot space is almost completely lost, and you can manage a few soft bags at most. Into the back seat of the Hyundai Exter, and in the interest of this being a normal sized car, I have rendered the services of a normal sized human being, my boss. Amey Dandigar, Amey, say hello. So here's the deal. The cabin of the Exter is quite dark, as you can see, but the glass area of this car is absolutely massive, not including the sunroof that's there up front. And you do get a great sense of space on the inside that also translates to actual cabin space that's available in this car. So seating a 6-footer behind his own driving position, quite easily manageable. You have knee room. You have ample foot room, plus the seat, the lower half, it's actually got a soft finish, so if your shins do touch against it, it doesn't feel uncomfortable. And even the seat, it's been angled just right to give you decent under-thigh support even if you are on the taller side. Now here's the catch though, the seat itself is quite flat, so you don't get much by way of support for the individual people who will be sitting here. This would usually bode well if you were planning to seat 3 at the rear, but the car itself isn't that wide, so that doesn't work out to be that much of an advantage if you're trying to seat 3, because it is still going to be a little bit of a squeeze. The biggest thing that stands out about this car though is the sheer amount of headroom available. In fact, even with me sitting in the back seat and my head resting on that adjustable headrest, I have about 4 to 5 inches of headroom to spare, and that's saying a lot. As for amenities, you do have a rear AC vent along with a rear 12-volt charging socket. There are independent headrests that are adjustable for the side 2 occupants, but no middle row headrests, although you do have 3-point seat belts for everyone over here. The one big miss here though, there's no rear armrest. In fact, there isn't a front armrest either. Now, while the Exter looks SUV enough outside, from behind the wheel it doesn't feel much different than a hatchback. Taller than a Neos, yes, but that is a function of the car's raised ride height in comparison. So the bonnet isn't really in your line of sight unless you prefer setting up a driving position that's very high up. The cabin materials are par for the course. Hard but smooth finish plastics make up most of the cabin, but touch points like the leather steering, steering controls or AC knobs feel nice to use. Not a rich or premium cabin, but decent. A nice touch comes in the form of contrast seat and steering stitches that you get with certain exterior interior colors. This extends to the AC knob finish too. Blue with the cosmic blue shades, light sage with the khaki green, or white dual tone. But the chunk of the Exter's masala comes from its features. There's an electric sunroof, wireless phone charger, 8-inch touchscreen with only wired Android Auto and Apple CarPlay that's very intuitive and smooth to use, digital instrument cluster, cruise control, and BlueLink connected car tech. 6 airbags, ABS with EBD, and rear parking sensors come as standard. Higher variants add ISOFIX, a rear camera, highline tire pressure monitoring, stability control, hill start assist, and auto headlamps. The SXO Connect also adds a dual view dashcam that offers a frontal and in-cabin view. Hyundai also claims to have made structural enhancements to improve crash safety competence, though no tests so far.
Alright, let's get driving with the Exter, and this mini, compact, this hatch SUV is available with only one engine option, a 1.2-litre 4-cylinder petrol engine. And that is an advantage in this segment that's largely dominated by 3-cylinder engines. This engine is not very high on power, and what it does make it quite high in the rev range. But what we like about it is just how smooth it is, how linear the power delivery is, and how there's never really any sudden spike in performance, no matter how much you explore the rev range. So it's very new driver friendly in that sense, and combined with the light controls, the light steering, it makes for a very relaxed daily commuter. It's something you can live with and get used to very easily. On the highway, it'll have adequate performance for most people, and it's happiest while cruising between 80 to 100 kilometers per hour. It's most efficient there as well. And you can go quicker than that, but obviously at that point, you'll have to start pushing the engine. And that is where you'll start exploring certain gaps in the kind of performance you're going to get with an engine of this nature. Because for overtakes, you do have to, well, especially at high speeds, you will have to knock down a gear or two, and when you do, you'll have to build the revs a little bit to get going, but you can make those overtakes. It's just a matter of pushing the engine just a little bit to make them easy. Now, thankfully, when you need to push this engine, even with this 5-speed AMT transmission, it's something it lets you do quite easily. And even though this is an AMT and you can tell it is one, they've managed to control the shift shock really well. And that is something I think they've picked out a leaflet from the Santro AMT's book, and they've managed to retain the kind of smoothness that you get even with that transmission. So you don't feel like you're getting shortchanged. The transmission doesn't feel dim-witted or lazy or slow when you need it to give you kick down like when I need it right now. And when you do want to take that additional layer of manual control, of course you do have the option of switching it to manual mode, and you can use the Steptonic style upshift and downshift. But a very first, after I think the Lamborghini Aventador, this is an AMT that comes with paddle shifters. And this might seem like a novelty addition at first, that paddle shifters with an AMT, what's the point? Is it even going to work? But surprisingly, it works really well. It does feel quite intuitive, and it's quite flexible with the kind of drive that you're looking at. So for example, right now when I'm driving it normally, I've kept it in drive mode. I've given it a quick downshift. Want to move to third. Let's say I've made an overtake now. Keep going, keep going, keep going. Super smooth while changing up. And it's also very generous in how hard you can rev this engine out. Even in drive mode or in manual mode, it'll let you go all the way up to the red line of about 6,000 RPM. So it does feel very flexible in that sense, and you don't feel held back by the automatic transmission. In fact, between the manual and the automatic, I would actively recommend getting the AMT. Now, one quick thing before we get into the ride comfort. No matter what transmission you get, this is not a car that's meant for the enthusiast. But while it will let you rev the nuts out of the engine, even in manual mode, if you do land up pushing it too much, the transmission will land up auto upshifting. Reasonable, since it's letting you push it enough anyway.
For inclines, the Exter does get hill assist for added safety, but on slow crawls uphill, it can roll back a bit before the transmission's creep mode gets it going again, so it'd be safe to keep the handbrake handy.
Now, as for ride comfort, one catch is that, say for that one pothole, we've been driving on largely fantastic roads in Rajasthan, so it's quite, thank you. We've been driving on largely smooth roads, so it's not the best position to give us the complete idea about the ride comfort. But one difference we can tell is that this is set up slightly stiffer than something like a Grand i10 Neos. The flip side to that is that on one hand, you'll find that at low speed bumps, In that situation, a Nios will give you a slightly cushier ride. But out on the highway, whether you're sitting in the front or the rear row, when you come across undulations at 85-100 kilometers per hour, the car doesn't feel bouncy. You know the stereotypical things that people say about Hyundais being bouncy, feeling boaty? None of that really being felt in the Exter, even while driving with 3 to 4 people on board at high speeds. So they managed to get the suspension set up quite well. The Hyundai Exter looks like something offbeat, but mostly it's a sensible daily drive that gives you a lot of bang for buck, both with the kind of features on offer and the kind of practicality that you get with this car. I can see this being bought by or bought for a lot of young drivers, people who want a little bit of a personality with their car, even if it is largely a matter of how the car looks. But underneath its fancy-ish skin is a sensible car for the family.